Look, every Australian would hope on Saturday for a fair and honest election. Mind you, if over a quarter of eligible voters have already voted, most probably illegally, because they don't meet the criteria that entitles you to vote early, that prompts a very important question. Is the Electoral Commission asleep at the wheel? The taxpayer funds this Electoral Commission to the tune of over $200 million. What investigations have they done into Mr Holmes' court and his Climate 200 crowd backing teal independents to knock off Liberal candidates who actually share the same somewhat deranged views about climate change? But the real issue here is that they seek to do whatever is necessary to promote the transition from coal and other fossil fuels to renewable energy. So, what financial interests does Mr Holmes' court have in the renewable energy industry? Mr Holmes' court seems to be in bed with Mike Cannon-Brookes and Malcolm Turnbull. Should we know what business interests they have that are related to taking action on climate change? They say that climate change represents a financial and business opportunity on the scale of the Industrial Revolution at the turn of the 19th century. Now, forget the overblown rhetoric, but what financial and business opportunities are available to Mr Holmes' court and his campaign on climate change if they were to win the argument to transition away from coal to renewable energy? They want coal in particular wiped out. How would they benefit from a massive shift, if it were possible, which it isn't, to renewable energy? Mr Holmes' court was a pioneering supporter of wind energy. Indeed, he promoted a community ownership model for Hepburn Wind Farm near his Victorian rural property. The very same project received a $1 million grant from the Victorian government last year. Interestingly, Mr Holmes' court stepped down from the board in 2015 when the company recorded a massive loss. But Mr Holmes' court's Climate 200 group is donating $10 million to these teal independents committed to tougher emissions targets. Why shouldn't the Electoral Commission ask Mr Holmes' court about his portfolio of family and other businesses focused on making money out of a boom in alternative technology to coal, mistakenly called clean energy technology? Who are Decarb Ventures, a company Mr Holmes' court set up in January this year? Mr Holmes' court has said that Decarb is pursuing global investment in clean energy technology. Mr Holmes' court reportedly has shareholdings in several companies that profit from investment in renewables and clean energy. These companies reportedly include an outfit, 5B Holdings, in which Mr Holmes' court reportedly has a stake, along with Mr Turnbull and the Future Superannuation Group. Mr Holmes' court's a director of a charity called the Australian Environmental Grant Makers Network, which was reportedly set up to identify environmental funding opportunities. Mr Holmes' court denies he will profit from his political activities, but surely an electoral commission dedicated to fair elections should investigate where the advocacy of these teal independents could lead financially if they were successful. No one is suggesting Mr Holmes' court is doing anything wrong, but for voters to make considered decisions, they need to be aware of all the facts. If there were a hung parliament, would the teal independents get into bed with the Greens? Could they then guarantee to deliver government to the Labor Party on the condition that their climate policy demands were met? And if they were, would people like Mr Holmes' court and his companies and even Mr Turnbull and anyone on this Climate 200 bandwagon, would they be beneficiaries? These questions need to be asked and answered. If that is not what the Electoral Commission is about, then I believe it should be.